raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with your hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Here we focus on helping men and those with men in their lives solve some of life's complex challenges through understanding the practices of mindfulness and how they can help. Each episode is in an environment free of judgment and criticism, with a focus on authenticity and inner peace. Let's dig in.
Origami yourself. The first step is acknowledging that we all need to change and grow. We all have the ability to get to a place of self-awareness and say, I don't like this part of myself and want to be better. This is a quote from Let Your Light Shine, How Mindfulness Can Empower Children and Rebuild Communities, authored by two of our guests today, brothers Ali and Atman Smith, and then Andreas Gonzalez, who will not be with us today. But two of the three, hey, we can't win them all, right? We got two of the three. So happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back to Men Talking Mindfulness. I'm John McCaskill, and each week my co-host Will Schneider and I work to break down and demystify an aspect of mindfulness and make it meaningful to you. This week, we'll be speaking with Ali and Atman all about mindfulness in schools and how they've seen it help in inner city Baltimore, not only in the schools, but in the community. And we're super excited to speak with them. But first, want to jump into some announcements. Will, over to you.
We got to get to this grounding practice quick, John.
I know, man.
Everything is testing our patience today. Hey, it's great to be back, everybody. Well, Happy New Year. Announcements. Hey, get more mindful. You can join us on our Mindfulness Adventure Retreat. It's happening on May 18th to the 21st this year on the East Coast in upstate New York. We're going to this beautiful the Wam Dharma Center in Claver Rack, New York. It's 4 days and 3 nights of working to rewrite your story so you can live a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. And right now, we're running an early bird special. So if you sign up before January 19th, you'll receive $400 off the full price. Go for more details and book your spot now. We're actually already booking spots, John. It's great. So you can get those details and book at mentalkingmindfulness.com/retreat. Once again, mentalkingmindfulness.com/retreat. Also, hey, join us on YouTube. Please subscribe. We actually just found a new editor, John, so we're going to be posting more content over there, snippets from the show and other content as well. But you can, tag us on and follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/@mentalkingmindfulness. And I'm just going to tease this, and we're going to dive in a little bit later. We're going to do 12 new month resolutions, or one different resolution every month. We're going to start this month with just hydration. We're going to talk about those details about how you can optimize your hydration in a little bit later on, and you can join us for that to optimize your health, optimize your mindfulness, and just be more of a badass. All right, John, let's bring up our guest, shall we?
All right, there's Ali and there is Atman. And gents, so excited to have you here with us today. Very excited about your book and everything that the book covers. And I'm just going to jump into that bio, and then we're going to get into that first practice and get into that meat and potatoes of the show. So Ali and Atman Smith, they're brothers. Ali and Atman are both co-founders, along with Andreas Gonzalez, of the Holistic Life Foundation. Ali was born and raised in Baltimore. They were both born and raised in Baltimore, a graduate of Baltimore University of Maryland, College Park. And so Ali received his BS in Environmental Science and Policy, and he is a pioneer in the fields of yoga and mindfulness in education, as well as trauma-informed yoga and mindfulness. Atman, again, the co-founder of HLF, and is a native of Baltimore, and also attended the University of Maryland, College Park, from which he graduated with a BA in criminology and criminal justice. Awesome. We're super excited. Again, those criminal justice and the environmental science and policy, we want to get into how that came to be HLF and what it is you guys are doing now. But before we do that, I'm going to turn it over to Will to lead that grounding practice because, again, this is the first show of the season. We're always shaking off the dust. We're a little nervous as we go live. So we're excited to have you guys, but I'll turn it back over to Will.
All right, we're just going to do 5 breaths, everybody. That's how we start the show. And why 5 breaths? It can really make a huge difference how you're showing up, how you're feeling, let go of your mind, create more clarity, create more confidence, help you be more present. But let's go. So if you can close your eyes, or you can do this while you're driving or cutting the grass or at the gym, we're just going to exhale out the mouth like you're blowing out a candle. Empty, empty all the way out. Good. Let's take a big inhale through the nose for 4 seconds. 3, 2, 1. There we go. And blow out that candle again. Slowly control. Let all the breath go out. Inhale again. 4. Exhale out easy. Feel your face relax, your shoulders relax, your face. Okay, take a few more. Inhale. 4. Out. Last 2, big breath in. Really try to fill from the bottom of your diaphragm. You talk about belly breath in the book, the middle all the way to the top of the chest, and let that balloon go out nice and easy. Yeah, we'll do one more. Inhale big. Maybe a bigger balloon this time. Keep going. And let that go out. Good. Make a little micro movements and then open the eyes. And gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having us. We're really excited about this.
Yeah,
Awesome.
definitely, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, first question is how one of you has hair and the other one doesn't. And you're both brothers. Is my first question. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
So he got the hair genes and I didn't. I got our dad's hair genes and he got our mom's side of the family hair genes.
And honestly, I can grow hair on top. Ali grows hair on his face. So
there you go.
Hair,
The funny thing is when I talk to my kids about taking care of their hair, I got 2 sons and I'm always like, look, you guys could take care of your hair and have hair like your uncle, or you can not take care of your hair and have hair like your dad. And then they run to the bathroom and they start putting like stuff in their hair.
I love it. I love it. We got the trash talking already. Well, yeah. So gents, I want to help to promote your book. Again, that's Let Your Light Shine, How Mindfulness Can Empower Children and Rebuild Communities. It's a great read, very enlightening. Will and I were talking before you guys came on about how much we learned from this. Even as mindfulness practitioners, we learned about mindfulness, but we also learned a lot more about it. We also learned a lot about communities, and specifically Black communities. And I went to school in Annapolis. I don't know, what is that, 30 miles from Baltimore, and it is a completely different world, right? It may as well be on a different planet, from what I understand now from reading your guys' book, and then also just recently listened to you guys on the 10% Happier podcast with Dan Harris. I learned a ton about stress from poverty, multi-generational trauma, and we're going to get into all that. But I also was really fascinated in what you guys touched on in the desegregation, and how you touched on how that actually hurt the Black community, or at least in your opinion. And we're going to touch on that maybe later in the show. But before we get into that, let's get into your backstory. Like, how did you guys get into what it is you guys do now, and how did you guys found the Holistic Life Foundation? What is it? What does it do? That type of thing. Let's start there.
So I don't even think we had a choice. Like, our dad was a coach and a hard ass. Like, our dad was one of the toughest people I've ever met in my entire life. And he told us we were going to meditate, so we meditated. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't really have a choice. Our dad was all about mental toughness. Like, that was his whole thing. You had to be tougher than any situation that anyone could put you in. Like, so he was all about that. And I think a part of that was the meditation practice. Like, our teacher would always say to us, our godfather was our teacher, one of our dad's best friends. And he would always say, either you kick your own ass on the inside or you get your ass kicked on the outside. I think that was a part of the meditation process. And, and our dad was like, he was all about it. Like, he was into hatha because he had a prostate issue. And then when he got, the part of the prostate exam, he went to his best friend. He was like, yo, I don't want to do this again. And he taught him a couple practices, didn't tell him it was yoga, and he'd never had a prostate issue for the rest of his life. He never had a prostate issue. So he was sold. And, we didn't do yoga as kids, but we definitely were into meditation. And then we grew up in a self-realization fellowship church, autobiography of a yogi style.
and it was all in Kriya Yoga, so we meditated there. And that was just a part of who we were. We grew up in a Quaker school where there was meeting for worship. There was a pause before everything you did. So there was like all these things that were important. And even our mom was never really into the meditation practice, but she was into prayer. I mean, that's still her thing. But she was into the Ayurvedic cooking. We were vegan.
Mhm.
Like we were definitely the only vegans in West Baltimore or North in Pulaski. Like there was no one else close. You know what I mean? So it was like very unique upbringing. And I think that was what planted the seeds for the Holistic Life Foundation. We got out of all that stuff as life went on, but got back into it as we are trying to figure out, what the hell we're going to do with our lives. We were finishing up college. Our dad was pushing us to be entrepreneurs, and but we didn't know what we were going to do. And it was the whole like, hey, go graduate from college, get a job, get married, have some kids, retire, and die. We were
Right.
like, there's got to be more to life than that. Like that's bullshit. Like somebody's feeding us bullshit somewhere. Like that doesn't make sense. So it was like, we started asking all these questions, reading all these books, and our godfather's just kind of sitting back, smiling, like just waiting for us. You know what I mean? Like he had been trying to push yoga on us for a long, long time, but we just weren't ready. I know one of our favorite books, definitely one of our favorite books is probably it's actually sitting on the floor next to me right now. The Holy Science he gave to me for my birthday, and I wasn't ready. He wrote a note in it, and it actually balanced my PlayStation 2 for a long time because, a broke college student, I had a lopsided a lopsided bookshelf with my PlayStation and my TV on it, and it just balanced it, make sure my discs didn't scratch up. And, eventually I got it, but I mean, like he was there sitting waiting for us, and like the practice just spoke to us. It was like, I think I don't think we could have learned it from anyone else other than him. He was just like a dad, tough ass dude, tough as nails. He was like the witch doctor, a healer in his community where people got sick, they came to him. He would give them some herbal remedies, some juices to drink, like meditate, like all these things that were like from that where you were healing yourself, and some meditation, some breath work, some mantras, some mudras, all this stuff. And I think it was just like the way that he taught us was very real, very grounded, and it just spoke to us, so we just ran with it.
And this
Ali,
is Will you're talking about, yeah?
Yeah, that's
yeah,
Uncle Will.
Will.
Yeah.
Ali
Uncle Will,
likes to
yeah.
call him the Sam Jackson of yoga teachers because he used a lot of MFers in trying to give us some information. So that's why Ali said it spoke our language. So
Yeah.
It definitely spoke our language. It'd be funny taking people over there, and like we were like, because we would talk about him and talk about all this spiritual stuff, and we'd take a friend or somebody in our family, like just one of my buddies with us over there, and they're looking at us because he's like, oh man, F this and MF that and da-da-da. But they're learning about the light inside themselves and the shine in the rest of the universe.
Right.
And they're like confused at first, but then they get it. They're like, oh, okay, he's speaking a language like he don't, like, he was always about like not being like all holier than thou where you couldn't speak to people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people want a message they can understand in the way they can understand it, and not like speaking from the mountaintop. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it was a
You
good
guys talk
thing
about
that he was our teacher like that. I don't think we'd have got it from anybody else.
Yeah. And you guys talk about that very thing in the book, and again with Dan Harris, is about meeting people where they're at, right? Like if you come at them from a pedestal, most often they're not going to listen to what you have to say. And we'll touch on, the changing of language, even as you guys approached administrators within schools. You had a whole yoga curriculum, and you presented it as a yoga curriculum, and then they were like, hey, you got to change all the yoga language in this to something else. And we'll touch on that here in a second, but I'll turn it over to Will. I know he's got some more questions too.
Yeah, I mean, I was really blown away by this book, and part of it was really gut wrenching. Like, personally, I kind of grew up in all white community. I had, my parents. I was able to go to school. And we definitely came from humble means, but just kind of reading about the community and where these kids come from, and the trauma that these kids are experiencing, and how that trauma translates into the classroom, into the neighborhood, into their lives, into the relationships, and how that continues into their adult life. I'm so grateful you're doing this work for these students. And tell us a little bit about let's talk about, you tell us about the multi-generational trauma and the poverty related distress, and how they impact the kids into the community. I think it'd be a good place to kind of tip off. if you will.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like honestly, in the book we talk about how people talk about Maslow's hierarchy, and that is what people need to feel safe. And our kids don't have any of that stuff. They don't have um, shelter, safe shelter. They're sometimes moving from house to house to house. They live in neighborhoods where people are sitting out on their porch, selling drugs, and seeing people get shot, or they're dealing with a lot. So I remember when Ali and I first got into the work, we thought we were dealing with like you know bad behavior kids, and that was never really the case. Once we got a little older and started hanging out with like a Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, or Richie Davidson, and other neuroscientists, we understood that there was like a trauma issue. And that makes kids not have access to certain aspects of their brain, their prefrontal lobe, executive function, and stuff like that. So a lot of the issues that we saw coming from being from underserved communities and dealing with like trauma firsthand, secondhand, and even intergenerational, their behavior problems are actually traumatic problems. And we knew that when we work with some of the practice that we work with, how it helped us. It strengthened us mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And, it helped, the practices help heal trauma, the trauma that's stored in the body, the trauma that makes you not be able to be present or have access to your prefrontal lobe. And, we just started honestly teaching these people in different communities to help empower them to be able to, heal themselves from the inside out. But, we're seeing that it works in Baltimore, and, we are duplicating this around the nation and around the world now.
Love it.
Yeah, I know when you were talking about intergenerational trauma, like like you see certain things and you feel certain things like from your parents, your grandparents, but I didn't think about. We do work up at a Mohawk reservation called Akwesasne, and we were sitting in a presentation from Chief Cook, and one thing that she said that really hit home with me, and I'll never forget, is like I was talking about Dr. Besser Van der Kolk, trauma stored in the body, like, it happens, but then it's stored in your body. Like, one thing she was saying that like women are born with all of the eggs that they're gonna have, like
Right.
that they're gonna like, that are in their body. So like that one of those is gonna turn, if they have kids, is gonna turn into their child. So like the things that they experience are gonna happen to like they're stored in their body. So they're stored there. So like that energy stored in those kids. So the kids come out with that same energy. Or like I think she was saying if they're pregnant with a girl, those girl babies already have. So it's like not only does it happen to them, it happens to their grandkids too. So like it's real, like it happens, and it's just stuff that people have to deal with and people have to accept, because there's definitely certain things that I know that I respond and react to certain things the same way that or we both do, that our dad or our mom may have, but it's not an experience that we've had. It's just something that's kind of it's innocent. It's innocent as a part of us. So I think everybody's got that healing to do, but a lot of people ignore it, and a lot of people ignore it and hide from it, I'll say.
Right. And the other side, so you talked about multi-generational trauma, the poverty related stress that you mentioned in the book, and something that I didn't really consider is how, yes, that causes problems potentially in the classroom and in the community, but also at like the cellular level, right? What that can do and increase your risk of disease, or make you more prone to getting those particular diseases. I was really fascinated by that and saddened by it as well. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, like I don't know if you've ever like I know the first time I was ever introduced to the adverse childhood experiences and saw an ACEs test was at a training for a funding foundation here in Baltimore, the Family League of Baltimore City. And like they start talking about ACEs scores and what it does, and like you were saying, like it makes you more prone to getting certain diseases or certain things happening to you, or certain dying early, certain life outcomes, where I'm like, we take the ACEs test, and I'm like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, damn, I'm a lot more fucked up than I thought I was, you know what I mean, from life experiences. And I think a lot of people see that, like, if you actually go through an ACEs test, like you'll see that the things that you've experienced aren't are hurting you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and once you become aware of them, then you can start to heal from them. If you're not aware of them,
Mhm.
you can't. And I think here in Baltimore, I think one of the things I was most shocked about, but that makes sense, is that Baltimore has some of the highest ACEs scores, at least from the chart that they showed, in the entire country.
Wow.
They would
Wow.
show like the United States would be here, Maryland would be around that level, and Baltimore would be way up here. And if you, and a lot of things are normalized in Baltimore that aren't normal. You know what I mean? Like when we go, and I don't think we realized it until we started traveling other places and exploring the world and seeing like things that we thought like that a lot of people think are normal here, and people kind of laugh off and joke about, aren't really normal. Like it's
Yeah.
not something that should really happen, and it's not a way that people should have to live, but it's just a normal thing in Baltimore because of things that we're exposed to from a very early age.
Traumatic. And sometimes we as human beings, we see somebody else's trauma and we're like, oh, well, my trauma isn't as bad as that. And so we think that we haven't been traumatized, but in actuality we have, and we can't minimize our own trauma because we all handle trauma differently. And sometimes, like you mentioned, those in inner city Baltimore, they may have been traumatized, but because it's normal, they don't think they have been. So the ACEs, test that you took and being made aware of that, that's sad, but it's also very important that that's there. So I applaud again what you guys are doing to make people aware of the trauma that they may be have been exposed to, whether that's through the ACEs or through what it is you guys are doing, or the ACEs test, or what it is you guys are doing. But there's so much work that we all need to do for ourselves so that we can heal, whether it's trauma from the battlefield, whether it's trauma from family, whether it's trauma from sexual assault or anything else. I mean, there's just so much trauma out there, but we don't even realize it.
Well, how does that? So tell us about the kids, like, and your first initial teachings, going into school, working with the worst of the worst kids, and how is that trauma manifesting in these children's lives and in the classroom? And then what were I love you talked about the mindfulness moment room and how that's really been helping tremendously to reduce the number of suspensions and detentions and expulsions. So let's just talk a little bit more about the trauma and the kids and how you've used the practices of yoga and breath work and meditation in order to help the kids wake up, to this trauma and realize that they don't necessarily have to go down that path every time that they have some sort of reaction to whether it's something internal, external, or just the fact that you talk about them eating, just a shitty breakfast and how that has an incredible impact on how they're showing up in the classroom and how that can trigger, these ingrained states of trauma that's within their DNA and in their mind.
I think one of the first things I noticed, I think one of the things about us is like when we first started working with kids, we had never worked with kids before. So it's just like we had a practice, we had a yoga practice, we had a meditation practice, breathwork practice, but we had never worked with kids before. And I think one of the first things that I noticed was that kids have the kids that have been traumatized have a lot of walls built up, around connecting with other people, even connecting with themselves. Like it's just like they're protecting themselves. There's a lot of fear, and it manifests in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of pain, and it manifests in a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of things that look like kids being like rude or obstinate. They're just like survival mode. So like the kids are in survival mode all the time, and they don't get a chance to actually be kids. Like it's not something they're choosing to do. It's like Atman was talking earlier. Like their brains are in survival mode too. So like those higher functions of the brain aren't even accessible to them. So it's like it looks like the kids are just behaving poorly and they're getting into fights and all these things are happening, but it's just because of the things that have gone on in their lives. Like they don't really have a choice about that. It's just the way and I think a lot of things help to break those things down. Like making their body a safe space through the physical practice is definitely number one. And I think the most important thing was just that consistency and love from the three of us early on. It helped them break down a lot of walls because it was like they had someone in their lives that cared about them, that loved them. And even I remember when we were doing a podcast a long time ago, we had Dr. Bessel, we had Bessel on there, and he was mentioning, he was like, the thing that you guys do the most to help people heal their trauma is right in your face. And we're like, what is the breathing, the movement? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, it's the love, man. Like love can heal any form of trauma other than blunt brain trauma, you know what I mean? Like brain trauma, but like any
Right.
other form of trauma, and love can heal. And that's what you guys are doing very well, like embodying it and loving yourselves, loving the kids, and they see it, and it helps them to start break down those walls, and then they can start to heal themselves too.
And I know another thing that Bessel used to talk to us about was, you know, and it's, you know, part of neuroscience now is neuroplasticity and, you know, the
Right.
ability for the brain to rewire itself.
Yeah.
You know, we heard a lot of lectures where people were talking about this and, you know, theoretically, but I think the beauty of it is once we learned, you know, what it was, we actually saw it in action with our kids. You know what I mean? Like from kids that couldn't peacefully resolve conflicts because, you know, that's all they know. Their parents tell them, like, you better not come in here with a black eye. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, you know, they know one way to resolve conflicts, but you know, through one of our practices, the loving kindness practice, we've seen kids that, you know, are quick to, you know, throw their hands and get into a fight, kind of change their behavior or rewire their brain to be able to peacefully resolve conflicts through a loving kindness practice that we do where, you know, if somebody comes into your mind or if somebody's even in front of you, you know, you send those people love when they go into your mind. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
you don't let them kind of overwhelm you and kind of like be, you know, dictating your pushing your buttons and, you know, being your puppet master, making you do whatever they want you to do and be aggressive back or, you know, whatever.
Right.
You know, they actually just, the kids in our program just send those people love, forget about them, and they can get back into that present moment. And you know, to see kids kind of be like, you know, I ain't even got to worry about them or adults too. Like all I do is send them love and keep it moving. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
definitely a way to rewire your brain. So, you know, you are able to be, you know, the master of your own universe instead of being, you know, a servant of your universe, you know?
Right? It's
Yeah.
much better to be He-Man than Orko.
Definitely.
I love it. I love it.
Great reference.
Oh shoot, I forgot where I was going to go. That was so great.
Well, I got something. So, well, one thing it's what's we talk all the time in the show, and we understand, you know, through all of us, you know, just through practicing and studying mindfulness, is the plastic, the fact that the brain is plastic, the plasticity of the brain. It can work either way. It can work against us, or it can work for us. And one term that I learned, you know, from reading your book is the allostatic load. And you know, I'm just going to read from your book quickly. It says allostatic load, and it's literally the price you pay, the price your physical self pays for your mental distress. Our brains, after all, are the key organ of stress. As the regions of the brains are exposed to chronic fear or worry, they remodel themselves, changing how they respond to future stress and anxiety. As we get older, this can manifest as cognitive impairment or chronic depression. Others might get hypertension or just, you know, turn into eating for comfort, perhaps developing diabetes and diabetes in the process. You know, but then we can go the other way. I mean, so you're introducing practices to these kids and anyone that you work with, so you can begin to, you know, take that. You mentioned a great word earlier. You know, as far as the way that you guys are raised, is taking that pause, and that's so much about like what these practices can do. It's just getting to know our breath and getting to know ourselves a little bit on just taking any kind of practice that's related to mindfulness, whether it's taking a breath, going for a walk, or, you know, doing some meditation, allows us to continually understand how important that pause is, so we can choose a different path, you know, that's more healthy for us and our environment and our ambitions, versus, like, you know, putting ourselves into a situation that, you know, we might get hurt, we might end up in jail or detention or something like that. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. So thank you, gentlemen. And John, what were you going to say?
Yeah, so I did remember. I remember. I can't remember if it was from Dan Harris's episode or from the book, when you talk about, it may have been in both, your uncle Will, or it's actually your godfather Will, but where you reference him, and I won't get political here, but he's watching the news and he's watching a particular political figure that he doesn't see eye to eye with, and you're like, how can you watch this stuff? And you're like, well, I'm challenging my loving kindness. I want to send this person who I don't see eye to eye with my loving kindness. And I just thought that was so great. So it's just not a question, just a comment more than anything about the loving kindness and how we can, in fact, send that love and kindness to those that we love, those that we are neutral towards, and those that we may have challenges with. And it's just so powerful what that can do in your life and how you see other people. They're not just other objects in your life. They are, in fact, other people with their own hearts and minds and ambitions and ideals and values. And it's important to see people that way. That said, I'll move on to the next line of questioning. I want to talk about the men and masculinity topic. That is something that is so core to our show. You know, we talk about masculinity. We've had folks on to talk about toxic masculinity, quote unquote, or reinventing masculinity. And I love how you said there's nothing wrong with masculine energy, inherently wrong with masculine energy, but there is a danger in a world ruled by masculine energy with no space for feminine energy or vice versa. And then we go into talking about how you learn to be a man from Smith, your father, and you learn how to be a gentleman from your mom. Now, in that same chapter, you talk about what happens when there is no positive role model, no positive male role model for young men in the inner city. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I feel like like I remember when our parents were getting divorced, and I guess I was probably in like the fourth going into fifth grade. Oppman was in like second going into third, and our dad would like have these long conversations with us about, you mean, like most of the time, like the mom gets custody of the kid, and things just kind of move from there. But he fought hard for joint custody, and we were trying to figure out like why our mom's not going any, like like why are you doing it? He's like, because your mom can't teach you how to be a man. You know what I mean? Like, and he was so adamant about it. And it's not something I got as a kid, but I think it's something that like again, our mom taught us to be gentlemen. Our mom taught us to be compassionate, caring individuals, but our dad taught us how to be men in the world, and not like that toxic masculinity man, but like, or you know what I mean, but like a real man in the world, like just, and I think that's something we couldn't have. And our mom is amazing, but that's not something that we could have learned from her. And I think a lot of people, a lot of the kids we deal with, a lot of people that we know have a really negative relationship with the women in their lives, because like they don't have, like, most of the women in their lives, the people that are disciplining them, like people, the teachers, the principal, their mom, their grandmother. So they start to get like this really kind of frictional relationship with the women in their lives that are constantly disciplining them, and they have no one to show them how to be a man. So it's like, you know, if you go to other outlets, it might look like anger, it might look like aggression, it might look like all these things that aren't really what being a man is about. Like, I mean, I think there's just a lot to unwrap there, where it's like, you do need men in your life that are going to show you how to be a man. You do need women, and there has to be space for both energies. I think that's a big thing with yoga, is like, we do have masculine and feminine energy inside of us, and you're off if you're all one way or all the other way. There's got to be a balance with it. But I think that plays out in real life. You have to see someone putting it into action for you to know how to use it in the right way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's, we need we want to be and hang out, and just as a young man or a boy, someone that is kind of like us, and a woman is not necessarily like us. And it's important to have those role models. I love, well, tell us about, that you mentioned in the chapter on 1 block radius, which blew my mind, as far as like how that plays. Because as a kid, like I was going miles away from the house on my bike and hiking and just having fun all over the neighborhood, and not fearing, just going 1 block away from my house. And you say they had never transitioned from the immature masculine of youth to the wiser masculinity of adulthood without transition and without tradition and ritual to guide her. That grandmother has no idea how to steer her grandson towards a symbolic passage into maturity. This lack of ritual has led to a crisis in masculinity in all parts of the world that don't practice it, Baltimore included. So what does a healthy evolution from adolescence to manhood look like, if you will? Or what have you seen, from the work you've been doing with so many different kids?
I know one thing that just popped up as you were saying that is, I think a lot of cultures, a lot of communities don't have respect for their elders like they should. And I think that's where you learn those things. Is like I know one of the things the first time we went up to Aquasaz, I mean, like we went up there and we taught in the schools, but like the first time we actually spent time in the community, the first thing that we noticed was how much they cherish their elders. Like that was like their number one priority. Like even when COVID hit, I remember COVID hit, there was a really hot summer and like all these things were going on. And their first thing was, how do we take care of our elders? So it was like they were passing out air conditioners in the like they had this old supermarket that was empty, and they had air conditioners that people would come by and get. If you didn't have anybody to help you put in your car, they help you put in your car. If you didn't have anybody to help you install it, they would help you install it. Like COVID, they shut everything down because they heard it was attacking old people. So boom, we're closing this off. Like you have to quarantine for a week before you get here. You got to like all these steps to get onto the reservation. And I think that's what's missing. I know in a lot of, particularly in Baltimore, in a lot of urban communities, such an antagonistic relationship between the elders and the youth, where it's just like and it's coming from both sides. I'm not going to say it's from one side. It's like the elders are like, oh well, why are you all doing this? Da, 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 da. Like you all are living wrong. You're doing this wrong. And the youth like, well, what do you know? You're not. You're still in the hood. You know what I mean? Just like so, it's like going back and forth, and there's no cohesion. There's no unity. There's no love. There's no family. There's no respecting the youth for the energy and the different vibration that they're on there, and there's no respecting the elders for their experience and their wisdom. So I think that's where the disconnect is. Like there's no, it's not there. Like it's like it's totally antagonistic and not to uplift the older people and the younger people at the same time.
Well, I think that leads us also to that in the desegregation that John had talked about, and the kind of the breaking apart of the neighborhood, and the lack of having elders like sitting on the porch and kind of watching a neighborhood that you kind of talk so beautifully out in the book. Like maybe we can just kind of
the Weak
dive
Ties
into
Network.
The
Weak Ties Network in the book, and how powerful that is.
I'm gonna have to make some technical changes here, guys, just so you know. But I'm gonna lose my battery. But keep going.
All right. Yeah. So if you guys could talk about the one in the book you mentioned again, how you guys feel, and you made some very strong points as to why desegregation actually hurt the Black community, and then tie that to the Weak Ties Network that you reference in the book about how important that Weak Ties Network is, and how it's kind of gone by the wayside, not just with desegregation, but also with the introduction of crack, the introduction of technology, the loss of connection to our communities, those types of things. If you guys could talk to that.
I mean, as far as the desegregation thing, I know everybody, there are some, positive, points to, the desegregation, but, from a African American perspective, I mean, before desegregation, Black folks were confined to a certain neighborhood, spend money in their own businesses, and just like with most other I guess races, their money kind of goes through their community a couple times before it goes out, and that's how it used to be in before desegregation, where business owners would help support different causes that needed to be supported in their community to support their citizens there, and it's really one of those things that once desegregation hit, and the schools were stellar, just because the teachers actually came from the neighborhoods, and it wasn't you didn't have to take cultural training and be trauma informed, because you were from those communities, so you knew how to not only deal with teaching the lessons, but actually deal with the behavior, because where these people are coming from. So it was like people were educating, policing, and investing in their own community. So that's why it wasn't as much violence and as much people having to just survive. It was it was a community,
Right.
and when desegregation came out, it kind of like took all of the economy out of the Black communities, took those teachers that understood where these kids were coming from to be able to relate to them and not label kids a bad kid. Johnny is coming from a home where the father just left, and might be going through certain issues. You would have a little bit more patience with them. So it kind of hurt the height of Black community is when before, where we where we were investing in ourselves, and then the funding, the education, the policing, everything kind of changed with desegregation, where a whole bunch of resources were taken out of the community, and now it's like I said, instead of a community thriving, they're just surviving.
Right.
And it's pretty hard.
Yeah, and then the weak ties thing, I think was something that I think it's one of the reasons that Atman and I are doing so well in life right now. I know we had awesome parents, but also our family and our neighborhood are a huge part of who we are today. And I think, like you were saying, when crack hit, like that whole that was gone. Like it decimated families, infrastructure, community supports. Like we had a family in our neighborhood. We moved back to our neighborhood, and there was no like that
Right.
wasn't there. That wasn't a thing anymore. Like we and I think that's a lot of the work why we do a lot of the work with the Holistic Life Foundation we did early on. Now I feel like it's scaled up, so it's about helping as many people, but I think it was more personal when it was just us living in our neighborhood doing the work, and it was about building those weak ties again in our neighborhood with the kids that were there that didn't have the supports that we had growing up to try to help them excel in their lives and just achieve on a really big scale. So I think yeah, crack hurt. I mean, because like when we grew up in our neighborhood, everybody owned their homes, and I could name everybody on our block, the blocks around us. Like I knew everybody, and now when we're getting back, it was like very few homeowners, mostly renters, a lot of Section 8 people moving in and out and in and out and in and out. So you never really got a
Right.
chance to know your neighbors, and they felt like, I mean, I could get disciplined by my neighbors when I was a kid. You know what I mean? It didn't have to be just my parents. Like
Right.
it could be someone else, or my parents could discipline somebody else's kids. So it's just like all these things were ripped away with the crack epidemic, and I mean, and now, a lot of those neighborhoods are just getting gentrified. So it's not even given a chance. It's not even really being given a chance to heal itself.
Right. Yeah. And you talked about, disciplining other kids, but you also in the book talk about supporting other kids, right? If both parents are working, maybe the kids can go to their neighbor's house to get a plate of dinner. But now that's not the case, or at least most of the time it's not the case. It's pretty powerful argument for how the crack epidemic really changed Baltimore and a lot of cities, and it also for the importance of the weak ties. Coming back to the desegregation piece, as a white man reading your book, you have a chapter where there's a list on what white people can do to help, and not only on what white people can do to help, but on understanding and acknowledging white privilege. Can you tell us why it is so important to not only understand it, but to acknowledge it, and then what we as white people can do to help with your program or others like it?
I mean, I think in America, white privilege is a superpower. You know what I mean? Like, if you're really, really looking at it, like, just there's certain things that would happen. Like, so our dad worked at Southern High School. It was a very it was like working class white people, working class black people at his school. So like he would point things out to us very early on. Like it was kids from like Cherry Hill and East Baltimore. Those are the black kids that were there, and then the white kids from South Baltimore that were there. And he would be like, every time someone had me, like I said, he would point it out to us and be like, yeah, this weekend, this kid and that kid from South Baltimore, the white kids, they got arrested for stealing a car. You know what happened to them? Like, nah, what happened? The police officer took them to their house, dropped them off, and told them not to do it again. This kid and this kid stole a car. You know what happened to them? They got beat up and they got arrested. Like, so it just very early on, just showing things that happen. I mean, even if you look at a lot of things that happen to people in this country, like there's two standards of what can happen and what can't happen. Like opportunities that some people have that other people don't. And I think if people understand that white privilege is a real thing in this country, they can use it to their advantage to help other people and use it to help. I mean, like, so, I mean, you could be unaware of it and think everything like, oh, we're all on a level playing field. Like, that's not really true if you really look at what's going on in this country and what has been going on in this country. So I think if you look at it from a place of like, hey, I'm at a place of advantage because of the color of my skin, and this person's at a place of disadvantage because of the color of their skin, we can kind of level the playing field a little, and I can use my white privilege to the advantage of the other people around me and lift everybody up instead of just being like, well, fuck it. You know what I mean? This is helping me. I'm just going to roll with it. It's too bad for them.
Yeah. No, very important. And I loved the list and how you explained, as if we're talking to, if Will and I come into a classroom and we're talking to a group of Black kids, we most likely don't have the most relevant information. We certainly don't understand the culture to a point that we can potentially lift them up alone. And a lot of the time we being just white people as a whole, those who may be certainly affluent can come in with that hero's mentality, right? You talk about that in the book too, and how not to do that. And then the last thing I want to talk about in that list is how a lot of the time we commit and then don't show up. Like we commit to showing up 4 times a month and then don't show up, where you guys mentioned, hey, it's actually better to show up 1 time a month, or rather commit to 1 time a month and actually show up, than commit to 4 times a month and show up twice, because you're letting those people down 50% of the time. You're letting your students down, the ones that you're helping out, 50% of the time, and they've been let down all their lives, and now they just start to get jaded. They get jaded about the program, they get jaded about the people that are teaching them, and how important it is to actually commit and stick to your commitments. So thank you for writing that into the book.
I mean, I think that one of the things that we've seen with being committed to, a group of kids that may not have had a lot of those weak ties is, that they achieve on a lot higher level. We create opportunities for them, and they, like Ali was saying, like the weak ties really enhance, what your scope of life can really be, just because of the opportunities that you create. And I think that a lot of our kids do the same thing. Like they see a lot of kids that don't have any support. And one thing, I'm sorry, I'm just going back for a second.
Yeah, that's good.
These weak ties and the commitment that you show, it kids aren't really accountable to that many people. That's why they don't achieve at a high level. And one thing that we've seen is that, when we were committed to our first group and the second group of kids, or when we were doing direct services, they achieved at a high level because, they did feel like they didn't want to let somebody down who's been consistent in their lives. And we've seen that ripple effect going out in all of our different programs, that, if people are committed, you'll totally touch and impact these kids' lives and have them, accountable to somebody, so they want to achieve. So, that's one of the beauties that we've seen.
Yeah, we had students that would be like, they would show their parents their report card before they would show us their report card. Like they would go home, they would show their parents and be like, well, where's your report card?
I'm not going to get my ass kicked that bad, but you guys will kick their ass.
You know what I mean? Like we would check them and keep them in line. Like, and they were like, they would rather go home and show somebody that didn't really give a fuck than show us who really did give a fuck and get in them. Like, you are smarter than this. Like, we're here to support you. Like, how come every day you come to after school program, you say you don't have no homework and you fail in this class? Like, you know what I mean? So like, they would hide their grades from us for as long as possible until we would go take them to the office or talk to their parents about showing us the report card. And then they'd be like, all right, fine, here you go. And then so like, because we held them accountable for everything that they did.
Right. And they had your respect, which makes a huge difference in any community, any relationship. Well, let's keep talking about the kids. Like, talk about some other ways that you empower the kids. And that's really like your mission. Is not to save them, but to empower them to make different choices and to really understand the incredible potential that they have, and go after what they want.
I know one way that we empower our students is with our reciprocal teaching model. Just like our teacher, when we showed up the first day to learn some yoga, he's like, man, I ain't training no devotees. I'm teaching teachers. So, that's the same attitude that we have, because, his whole thing is like, you don't want to be relied on anyone. You want to be your source of information, practice, and, be able to take that practice off the mat and actually in your life. And, that's the same mentality that we have, is that whole reciprocal teaching model, where we teach kids not only how to do the practices, what the benefits are, and how to practically apply it into your life. Like, if somebody has just stressed you out, do this breathing practice, and, it could push pause on your mind and help you get back to that present moment. So, teaching them how to actually take these practices into their life. And that way that in life there are highs and lows, you know what I mean? And when you are on that low trajectory, a practice that can kind of help you get back to equilibrium, and if not, going back a little bit higher. So I think that's one of the way that we empower the students is making them teachers.
Nice.
Yeah, and in other ways we get them to connect to themselves. I feel like kids are so disconnected from everything except for the fucking internet. You know what I mean? They're disconnected
their
from
phone,
everything.
right?
You know what I mean? Like their phone, their iPad, like they're all about it. And they're like, so like we want them to connect to themselves, and I mean they're not connected to what's going on inside, like their thoughts, their emotions, like that, like to let your light shine, like that universal spark within them. Like they're disconnected from all this stuff. And I think one of the greatest tools we give them is to connect to themselves, because once they connect to themselves, then they can start to connect and care about something bigger. Like I can't ask you to care about anyone else or love anyone else or have compassion or empathy, care about a person, the environment, your neighborhood, whatever, if you don't love yourself first. And you can't love yourself if you don't know yourself. I think it's a lot about this inner work and these inner practices, is getting to know yourself and connect to yourself. Because that once you see that, then you start to see like that light in you and everyone and everything else around you. And then you can start to like function in a different way, instead of just being like, you know what I mean? Like you were talking about that 1 block radius earlier. Like if I'm disconnected from myself, and I think the only things that are possible for me are in the tangible neighborhood around me, and that's it, that's a pretty fucking dismal existence. You know what I mean? That's hopeless. Like I would be angry too. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you can teach them how to connect to themselves, then it's like, all right, well, boom, I'm like, wow, there's this whole universe inside of me, and there's this whole something bigger outside of me than just this 1 square block. Like I need to start exploring and connecting to all that too. So I think that like that inner resource, like showing them that there's something inside of them that's bigger than just their physical body and their physical neighborhood, and connecting that and loving that, and then letting it ripple out from there.
In that same line, you talked about how we are basically like a spool of thread. If I remember the analogy correctly, it was like a spool of thread, and we are that center, the core of that spool of thread, that the true selves, and all our bad habits and everything else are what are wound around that spool of thread. And as we stop our bad habits or make efforts to stop our bad habits, we're unwinding that spool of thread and finally getting to that inner core. What practices would you recommend someone start with if they are wanting to start a practice of their own, and then specifically if they're wanting to get to know themselves?
I'd say, I mean, easy one, because a lot of people get they stay away from yoga because they're not flexible. They can't twist themselves up into a pretzel. And that's what they think yoga is. But it's so much more than that. And I think that was one of the things I loved about our teacher, was that like Uncle Will always talked to us about all the different forms of yoga. And your mat has very little to do with your practice. It's like how you're spending your time off your mat is where your practice gets tested. So for me, I'd say Jnana yoga, which is like the yoga of knowledge. The yoga, it's pretty much the yoga of your thoughts. Because most of the time, like when we let our minds, most of the time we're not even aware of our thoughts, and like our minds are running all day long, and it's like physically exhausting how much mental energy we burn off. And then if you let your mind go, it always ends up in a negative place unless you actually put some effort into putting it into a positive place.
Right.
And then we have like that negative self-talk and that inner critic that's constantly telling us that we're not worthy of this, we're not worthy of that. Someone will do something, and then we're constantly thinking about how you should whip their ass, or how you should do this to them or do that to them. So like all this stuff is going on in our mind. And Jnana yoga is all about like watching your thoughts. You know what I mean? Like you're actually paying attention to what's going on up here. And then you actually look at where, like what the source of that, like you do some reflection on it. Like you see, well, where's the source of this thought coming from? Like why is this thought coming into my mind? And then the third part is turn it into something positive. You know what I mean? So like if you're constantly telling yourself, no, I'm not worthy of this thing in my life, like, well, why am I telling myself that I'm not worthy of this thing in my life when it is possible for me? And like then you switch it to like, well, I am worthy of this, and not only am I worthy of it, but it's attracting to me right now. Like
Right.
I think that's a good place to start, because our mind kicks our ass. Like it can be like our best friend or our worst enemy. And for most of us,
100%.
it's our worst enemy. And I'm aware of the practice. You know what I mean? I'm aware of Jnana Yoga, and it's still my worst enemy sometimes. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
it's not like once you learn the practice, it's just going to be like poof, it's magic, and then all of
Gotta
a
do the
sudden,
work.
you know what I mean? You got constantly got to do the work.
Always.
That's what our teacher would talk about. It's like you're like you are like you're not. It's never going to be over. You know what I mean? Like we're human beings. Like that's what human beings do. That's the mind makes thoughts. The mind makes shitty thoughts. Like you know, like that's a part of it. So like you got to be aware of it, and you got to constantly be vigilant and put your practice to the test, and constantly trying to push yourself in that right direction.
And like you were saying, you were talking about like habit patterns or sanskaras, going along with Ali's theme of the thoughts. They say, like you were saying, like, we're like the inner part of the spool, and habit patterns are like, the string wrapping around, and the more you do habit patterns, certain habits, they become tighter and tighter on your true self. And they say a good practice to do to kind of like unravel or loosen up that thread is try to catch your thoughts at a thought construct level, like if you're about to do a behavior that is not healthy for you, like maybe smoking cigarettes. You're just used to, you have that habit of smoking a cigarette every single day, and it's not good for your respiratory system. So when you think in your mind that you're about to go grab a cigarette, insert a positive thought or a positive behavior. And the more that you have that thought, catch it at the thought construct level, and then turn it back into your positive behavior or positive thought, that habit pattern of smoking a cigarette will fall off like a scab, and you will form a new habit pattern, and that will be what's tightening up and creating the habit in your life. So catching thoughts that lead you down a bad path at the thought construct level, and once again either replacing it with a positive action or a positive thought, positive memory, that's a great way to kind of break bad habits. And that's something, like Ali was saying, our teacher was always like, man, it's great if you do these practices on the mat, or for like a half an hour, but there's still 23 hours in the day, or 23 more hours in the day. What are you going to do? You're going to be an asshole? So it's really about figuring out how to take the practices that you practice on your mat into your life and practically apply them.
And another simple one, like you were talking about this earlier when you were talking about Uncle Will watching the news and practicing like the love and kindness. Like Bhakti yoga is what it is. You know what I mean? Like he would always say, like he would say it was the hardest and the easiest form of yoga to practice, because it's all about like I don't have to bend a pretzel. I don't have to do no crazy breathing. I don't even have to meditate. All I have to do is like see the light in everyone else and everything else. You know what I mean? Which is easy saying. It's easy to say, but to actually do, it's difficult as hell. You know what I mean? Like, because there are, I mean, like, just like I'm an asshole in someone's story, there are people who are assholes in my story. You know what I mean? Where it's hard for me to see the light in them, but that's what the practice is all about. Because you know what I mean? Like, spiritually, we're all the same. We come from the same source. The same light shines in all of us. But that Bhakti yoga is a great way to start, because it frees you up from so much energetically. Because like whatever you send out there, it's coming back to you even stronger. So like if you're sending out that negative energy, that negative vibe to people or the situations, like it's coming right back to you. So like if you can stop it and see the light in that person, and it's not, and he would never teach like you're not walking around like a sucker. You know what I mean? Like we're not telling you to do that, but at the same time, like why waste all that? Like I mean, and a great part about Bhakti yoga is those people who are taking advantage of you and getting over on you, love them at a distance, keep them out of your life. Like you put up that boundary, keep them the fuck away from you, and you just every time they pop up in your mind, boom, you see their light, and you don't have to worry. Like they're gone. They don't even really exist to you. Like their spirit exists to you. Like you don't even have to, like they're not in a space where they can drag you down or do something take negative to you or take advantage of you, because you can just see their light. But the key to that is you gotta see light in yourself first.
I was just gonna say that, absolutely,
before you can see it in anybody else. Because like he would always, like, that's another thing he would always say is like you got to see and feel and experience that light for yourself before you can see it in anyone else and feel it in anyone else. Because you got to experience. You can't think about it. It's not something in the mind. It's something you have to feel and experience.
And something you have to practice. Yeah, go ahead.
Hell yeah.
And I know Ali was talking about, Bhakti yoga. I used to be a real hothead, like the smallest things would have made me just react. And, I know that with Bhakti yoga, those same people that, might have push my buttons in the past, one of the main concepts of Bhakti yoga is respect. And that's like, seeing, like Ali said, you got to see your light in yourself first. Then you look at somebody else and you see their physical appearance, or their body, and all that type of stuff. And that's what spect is. But then re is like again, so it's like look again, and you look a little deeper. And that same light that you've experienced in your practice, you can actually see that, look deeper, look past that physical, and see that light within that person also. And it kind of helps you respond to things and not really be like, man, motherfucker, get out my face. Like you will be able to take that pause and respond. And just like, it's not worth it. I'll see that light and just remove myself from the situation. We're not, like Ali said, we ain't telling nobody to be suckers. You might have to defend yourself and stuff like that.
Sure.
But you can try to see that light and walk away from situations, and it usually works. And that's the beauty of the practice. It helps you kind of like bring your stress level down, because like stress kills people, man. And like if you try to have a battle with every single thing in life that pisses you off, that's detrimental to your health. So this practice of Bhakti yoga will help you kind of transmute that anger and focus on, see the light in that person, which will also make you tap into your light, which if you have a practice, you'll know how peaceful and loving and grounding the light is within yourself.
Namaste, right? That's where it comes from.
All day.
Right? It's like the light in me honors the light in you, and we share the same light. Nama means name, stay means I got that wrong, but go ahead, John.
I want to ask, we're coming up on, about 15 minutes left on the show, but I got a question as a father. So, I'm most likely not going to get into schools to teach in front of young men and women very often. The opportunity is just probably not going to present itself. But the opportunity presents itself every day to be a father and teach this to my children. And Ali, I know you mentioned children before. Atman, I'm not sure if you have kids, but I would love to ask a question to you guys. How do you bring this into your homes and teach your children, if you are, and how's it received?
So I remember when my oldest was born, and everybody's asking, when are you going to teach him yoga? When are you going to teach him how to meditate? When are you going to teach him? So I was like, well, when he starts asking the right questions, you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm not going to force it on him. So then once he started asking about my practice was when he started, you know what I mean? And it was just like I wanted to when we were kids, we were a part of our dad's practice, and we didn't really have our own practice. You know what I mean? It was like we meditated with him, and I think it was that's just the way it was. Like we meditated at Sunday school, we meditated with our dad, and then when our dad stopped meditating, we stopped meditating. So it was like trying to creatively figure out a way to make my oldest own the practice, and so it was just like consistently we'd sit down, we try different times a day. We found a time of day that worked with him, and so then we started practicing together and making it fun and having discussions. You know what I mean? Before we would meditate, like we would talk about how spirituality relates into his life, like, you know what I mean? And it was just me asking questions and him answering. Like it was like, and if he had a question for me, we would talk for a little while, and then we'd meditate, and that would be the end of it. It was a really fun, like, bonding experience for us. So I think that, like, it was never a punishment, you know what I mean? Like where like you got in trouble at school today, go breathe and go meditate and then come on and do your homework. It was like something that was fun.
That backfire real quick
for like showing up. Like, I mean, like that'll never work. And then I think another thing was like having him do it consistently and then just backing off. It's like we did it every night for a really long time, and then I just stopped. And I was like, well, at some point it's gonna hit him. And so it was like, I remember it was like Mr. Rookwood. I guess Mr. Rookwood was it was his third grade teacher, where he was like, Dad, I need to start meditating again. I'm like, oh, really? Why do you need to start meditating again? He started talking about things that were going on and like how he felt. And it was like, all right, well, cool. Let's start back up again. So, you know what I mean? Like he knows, he has his own practice. Like he has his mala that he does. Like I see him doing mantras with, like he wears it around the house, and he knows he's charging the energy. And my youngest, like when he was ready, I think my oldest was like around 3-ish, and my youngest was probably around 5, just because they're different in personality and like what they were interested in. And then he started meditating with us too. But it's always like we always make it fun. Like, and I make them take ownership of it. Like they guide what the practice is. And then like my practice looks different than theirs because of what's going on in their lives. So I think it's just like the fun aspect, them taking ownership of it and letting them guide where the practice needs to be, and just throwing in something like like throwing some mantras in. Like there's mantras in the book, and like there's even the part in there where my son says like if life was a video game, mantra would be the cheat codes. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, he's like,
Yeah.
holy shit, like
Gets
I
it.
can use this for. So
Yep.
it's like, give them stuff they can practically use and then make it really fun, and they'll stick with it.
Up, down, down, BA start or whatever it was.
Yeah, right,
for
right.
Contra.
Contra.
Speaking of, why don't we close on this? Speaking of like putting the practice into the schools, like why don't we talk about the mindfulness moment room, and what that looks like, and the results of just having that mindfulness moment room in a school, how that's changing the numbers of suspensions and stuff like that, and problem behaviors for the kids. I think it's also very helpful for like, the adults to hear this too, because like we can take that pause, we can take a moment and just, but go ahead, please tell us about where that came from and what that looks like.
I mean, where it came from, one of our funders asked us, if we could do a school-wide intervention, what would it look like? And, we came up with, a practice at the beginning of the day, school-wide practice over the loudspeaker, and a
Wow.
practice at the
Nice.
end of the day, just, to get kids grounded when they first come into school. So, they can shake off some of their home environment, that stress, that trauma that they may be dealing with at home, and get them present and give them access to parts of their mind that, they wouldn't have access to because they were in survival mode, like Ali was talking about.
Yeah.
Then we also created an alternative to suspension room, or the mindful moment room that you were talking about, where, kids in crisis, they could either self-refer if they're in high school or in middle school and elementary school. The teachers or administrators would have to refer the kids to the room. And, when they are in crisis, they come down to our room. And, the beauty, the reason why teachers love this is because they don't have to deal with the behavior issues and they can go back to teaching instead of, diffusing a situation, which will take away from learning time. And, they'll get sent to our room. They can stay in there for like 15 to 20 minutes. We have a staff member staffing that room all during the day. And first of all, when they come into the room, we empower our students by, doing active listening.
There you
And
go.
mirroring, and that, kids they're always talked at, especially in school. And, they're never talked with or heard. And, first walking into the room, we're doing the mirroring and repeating what the kids say. So they definitely feel heard. So, it builds up their, emotions and, makes them more calm when they first come into the room. Then, when they get into the room, we will talk to kids about like their stress, their stressors, and how the stress plays out in their body. And, they'll explain, what they went through in that situation. We'll ask them, where did you feel it at? They may clench their fist, they may clench their jaw, they may feel something in their stomach, and, they'll go to that. And then, afterwards, we'll say, well, all right, well, next time this happens, or let's do this practice, whether it's a breath or a meditation, where, the kid will be able to calm themselves down with a specific breath, where if they're hot-headed, they'll do a breath to kind of cool their mind down and make them less hot-headed, a breath to kind of make them less anxious, different practices that we have in there, breaths that induce a state of calm. So after they finished doing that practice, we asked them, all right, you all felt like this when y'all first came into the room. How do y'all feel now? And, there's like 5 circles on like a piece of paper, whether it's angry to a happy face. And, the kids always come in the room, like make a real messed up circle in the angry face. And then at the end, they achieve, peace and, they're grounded and present after doing the practice. And then, we tell them that next time they get into the situation in their classroom, we've identified who their stresses are or what their stresses are. We so that pay attention to when you have those around you, then you can know how the stress plays out in your body. Be aware, be mindful if your fingers are clenching up, your jaw is clenched, and know that the next time you get in this situation, do this breath, do this meditation right there, and then you can kind of calm yourself down, and that's empowering within itself. And our numbers start off really high at the beginning of the year, but because kids know how to self-regulate in their classroom, the numbers dwindle down to next to nothing. Where
This
in the
is
school,
suspensions and stuff you're talking about. Yeah.
This is the referral rates to the room.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Got it. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the referral rates go way down. And in one of the schools that we were at, Robert W. Coleman, in the epicenter of the Frederick Gray uprising, for 8 years we had 0 suspensions. And I know first year
It's
they
incredible.
sent us this information. We went to the principal and we're like, yo, Ali was like, I know you're fudging the numbers, you're like, these ain't no real numbers, like what the hell. And she was like, her and her assistant principal just bust out laughing. And they said, well, the kids that would get suspended, we send them to you all. And that kind of makes us not have to suspend anybody, because when they are in crisis or right before they're going to get into crisis, we send them to you all. It doesn't create a big situation. Nobody gets hurt. And kids get to take that 15 minutes to be able to pause, do that breathing practice. And yet we don't have any suspensions. And I think another cool thing about it is each room, it's not just a school room, it's an oasis in the school, where it's like an oil diffuser, Himalayan salt crystals, inspirational posters, zafus. Like, we don't have like the fluorescent lights, we have like lamps in there, or natural light. We have plants, we have fountains. So like, the teachers even walk past the room and just walk and just stand in there and just sniff, like inhale deep and walk, like, no, I just needed this. And then that helps them get grounded, because teaching is one of the most stressful jobs. That's why it's so high in burnout. But the room helps people in so many different ways. So it's brought down suspension numbers, brought up test scores, and just helped out the whole school environment.
Yeah, and one quick thing about the Mindful Moment program, we're actually we actually did a commitment with the Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Foundation, where we're expanding to 5 new cities. Philadelphia is going to be one of those cities, and we're looking for 4 more. Where we're going to train 2 people from those cities to facilitate the program in a school. We've got the Trauma Research Foundation doing a study on it to see how it affects the schools, but also the people that we train. Because one thing we've noticed is the people that we train to facilitate these programs have huge shifts happen in their life, from service work and from developing their own practice, but we don't have any like concrete numbers behind it. So we're really excited about that, like expanding to 5 new cities and training people, and then also getting some concrete numbers about the effects it's having on the kids and the adults.
Heck yeah. Congratulations, man. That's incredible. And I've got some people in Philly that teach this kind of stuff already, but maybe we can introduce you guys.
That'd be awesome.
Before we jump into the closing practice, which I would love if one of you guys would lead the closing practice, for our listeners, what's the best way for them to find out more about HLF and about you guys individually?
So I'd say for HLF, just shoot us an email, info@hlfinc.org, or go to our website, hlfinc.org. Follow us on social media. And I guess us personally, like a lot of the spiritual practices that we do personally, we can't do through the Holistic Life Foundation because we're in schools. So we started an organization called the Involution Group, where we do all of our spiritual teaching through. So you can just email us at info@theinvolutiongroup.com, or look on our website. It's just spiritualstrategicplan.com.
Right on. And again, for those listening, your book, Let Your Light Shine: How Mindfulness Can Empower Children and Rebuild Communities. Highly recommended.
Everyone hold
Look
it
at
up.
all of us. Come on, Ali, you got it.
Come on.
3 of the 4 of us are holding it up. I love it. But I'll turn it over to you guys to wrap it up in a bow with that closing practice, and then we'll say goodbye. So I'll let you guys flip a coin or whatever.
What you want to do, Ali?
I'll lead something. All right. So we were talking about the light. The book's called Let Your Light Shine. So let's we're talking about experiencing it and seeing it before you can see it in anybody else. So let's jump into that. So go ahead and get in a comfortable meditative position, back, neck, and head aligned. I welcome you to close your eyes. If you're sitting on a chair, try to root your feet in the floor if it's accessible to you. We'll start by taking a couple deep breaths in and out through our nose all the way down to our belly. So let's inhale nice and deeply. And exhale that breath out. Feeling your lungs fall, push your belly in. Inhale again deeply. And exhale it out. One more. Inhale nice and deeply. And exhale it out. Go ahead and relax your breath. Let it flow effortlessly. Just let it be. There's no right or no wrong. Just let your breath be what it is. And the first stage of yoga meditation is a stage called pratyahara, which means withdrawal of the senses from the outside world into the light that shines within you. So we're going to start with a sense of sight since our eyes are already closed. So what you're going to do is you're going to use your imagination. You're going to see a bright white light shining in the center of your chest at heart level, as bright as you can possibly imagine it. If you're having trouble and you feel yourself looking down with your physical eyes, don't do that. You're going to have to see it with your mind's eye, your imagination. So just use your imagination to see a bright white light shining in the center of your chest at heart level. And if you're having trouble picturing that, imagine like the light on your phone, on your cell phone, a bright white light. Just imagine seeing that shining there. Now we're going to pause sense of feel inward towards that light. Anything your body's sensing right now physically, go ahead and acknowledge it. Whether it's the temperature of the room, the position of your body, the connection to your chair, the texture of your clothes against your body. Go ahead and acknowledge all those sensations and start to pull your sense of feel inward towards that light. And what you're trying to feel is the positive energy and the vibrations that light gives off. Once you notice it, it might start feeling like a floating or swirling or fluttering feeling, or maybe even a vibrational feeling. But whatever it is, just pay attention to it and connect to it. You'll notice if you connect to it too tightly and try to grab onto it, the energy will kind of dissipate. So once you connect to it, very lightly and gently connect to it, and you notice the vibration will get stronger and stronger. So focus on seeing and feeling that light. And as you do, know it's your true self, like that universal spark that's within you, that full of universal joy, universal bliss, universal power, universal love, perfect in every single way. Last thing we're doing is use a sense of sound, sense of hearing. We're going to use the Om mantra for that. It's a universal vibration that everything in the universe gives off that interconnects us all. So we're going to inhale nice and deeply. And we're going to exhale with a nice, long, audible Om. Om. All right, inhale again nice and deeply. And exhale with another long, audible Om. All right, one more time out loud. Inhale nice and deeply. And exhale with another long, audible Om. All right, now pull that Om inward and hear it and feel the vibration of it pulsating from that light. Just mentally vibrate it. Hear it inside your head, vibrating from that light. So all your awareness is going to be on seeing that light, feeling the energy, and hearing, feeling the Om sound. And let the light of your true self shine and go in as deeply inside of it as you possibly can. We're going to very, very slowly and gradually bring our awareness back out from that light and back out to our physical body. I'm going to start by very lightly wiggling our fingers and toes. Roll your wrists and roll your ankles a little bit. Move your head some from side to side. And then whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and slowly, slowly open up your eyes.
That's beautiful.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure that's the first time we've done any type of Om on the show, and I love the fact that we sent that out into the universe. That was fantastic, guys. It's been fantastic having you on. I love your book. I love what you guys are doing. Congratulations on expanding and scaling HLF. And you guys are putting a dent in the universe, right? Really making that impact on our future with our youth. So thank you so much for being here with us today. I'll turn it over to Will to wrap it up.
No, just more thanks to you gentlemen for, sharing your wisdom with us today and bringing these practices to kids. One thing I've always felt is like, that's where we need to start, in our youth, and we could really begin to shift the planet and make huge difference in our cultures and our lives of, really accessing these practices from such a young age. So thank you guys for doing this work. And we really, really appreciate your time today. And I can't, anybody, I really suggest it. And I got to say, this book is well written too. It's fun. I was reading the last couple chapters today. I just kept getting pulled in deeper and deeper and deeper as like you're telling more stories about the community and the work that you're doing. So thank you, gentlemen. Any last parting words?
Nah, thank you all. We'd love to stay connected with you all too.
Sure,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm in the city. I'm in the city, in New York City, and I know a lot of teachers here. So I don't know. Are you guys in the city at all? Are you doing work?
Yeah, we
city
come up there. We're trying to
Okay.
actually get one city or New York as one of our cities for the Clinton Global Initiative expansion program. So if you have any connections there in the school system, connect us.
I do actually, and hey, when you guys come up here, I would love to drop in and just either witness your program or be part of your program in some way. Like I love what you're doing, and I love teaching as well. And I would just love to hang out with you guys and shoot the shit. It would be amazing.
Yeah, we would love to connect, man.
Yeah, sign us up.
Yeah, we will definitely all stay connected and see what we can, create together or just like help each other. Just move these practices deeper into our communities and into our lives, because we all have the same passion to really share that light, right? To find that light within by practicing on our own, but also giving that light to other people. And thank you for shining your light today. And I think that's it. Thank you.
There you go. And then for our audience, hey, thanks for joining us here today. We appreciate you. And if you would, give us a review and subscribe on the podcast and on YouTube. And until next time, peace.
Thank you, everybody. Peace.
Joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.